Because to humanity's materialism and disregard for the environment, Earth has devolved into a rubbish dump in the 22nd century. All of the surviving survivors fled aboard a starliner dubbed Axiom, leaving behind trash-compacting robots to clean the planet. Unfortunately, the cleaning is a complete failure, and 700 years later, only one robot remains, Wally. Wally listens to music while working and lives alone with a roach. When he comes upon an unusual object, he brings it back to his house, which he built inside an old garbage lifter. His collection includes an old movie, and watching it makes him wish he had a loved one to hold hands with. Every night, or whenever there is a sandstorm, Wally transforms into a cube and sleeps on his shelves. When he needs to charge, he uses sunshine to recharge his battery. One afternoon, after struggling with the fog, McCree makes an attempt to stand up again, opens the fridge, and is surprised to discover a plant. He puts it in a boot and brings it home, where he notices something new. A small red dot emerges abruptly on the ground. Wally starts following the moving light around, but the dot quickly increases and Wally realizes the lights are from an oncoming rocket. He rushes to hide inside a hole and watches the rocket land, releasing a modern model named Eve before departing. Eve instantly begins flying about, looking for the target of her mission. Wally quickly develops a crush on her and follows her around, albeit he is still afraid any time Eve fires at something because she heard a noise. The roach isn't as terrified and instead approaches Eve, who fires at it before understanding the bug is a benign creature and befriends it. Eve can't stop giggling at the roach walking on her body, and Wally joins in. When Eve hears him, she shoots, and Wally is only able to rescue himself by transforming into a cube. Eve arrives to check on him, and when her scanner reveals he's only a cleaning robot, she dismisses him and continues her hunt. Wally doesn't let up and continues to follow her around, attempting to impress her with presents and pranks to no effect. Eve is focused on her search, but she becomes frustrated when she cannot find anything. When Magnet Crane accidentally snags Eve, she snaps and sets fire to the entire machine. Wally notices she's in a terrible mood and approaches her to console her, eventually winning her friendship. At that point, a sandstorm appears nearby. Eve begins to panic, but Wally quickly drags her into his home. He begins to show her all of the interesting stuff he has, and Eve really knows how to use a couple of them, such as creating a flame on a lighter. When Wally shows her his beloved movie, Eve makes a tape of it, then she tries to mimic Wally's dancing routines. This prompts Eve to accidentally shove Wally into the wall, breaking him, but Wally isn't concerned because he has lots of spare parts to repair himself. Wally wants to attempt to grasp Eve's hand, but tragically she snatches it away. Next, Wally attempts to impress Eve by showing her the plant. This prompts her to take the plant and store it inside her body before switching to capsule form. It comes out that confirmation of plant life was her purpose. Wally becomes desperate and tries every method he can think of to wake her up, including leaving her in the sun to charge and even taking her on dates, but nothing works. Wally eventually gives up and returns to work, pausing only to stare at the lighter to recall her time with Eve. Suddenly, a rumbling draws Wally's attention, the rocket is back, and it's dragging Eve away. Wally races to the rocket and grips onto its handrail, so he may come aboard. The rocket reaches outer space and Wally is astonished by all he sees. He also exploits the closeness to the sun to fully recharge. Eventually, they discover Axiom lurking in a distant galaxy, and a succession of cleaning robots receive the rocket to clean everything of any contamination and emission. A small boy named Mo attempts to clean Wally, but when other robots take Eve away, Wally follows them, leaving a trail of muck behind. This suggests that Mo begins to follow him. They make it to a hallway where Wally finds the truth about humanity's current state. They've all become fat and lethargic, and they wander around on floating chairs, their gaze never leaving the screen. Robots operate the Starliner, from educating babies to cooking. Wally's presence draws John's attention and leads him to fall off his chair, forcing him to finally stop staring at a screen. While a group of robots comes to shove John back in his chair, Wally goes after Eve, asking Mary for some space to maneuver. Mary moves back, which causes her to stop staring at the screen and instead explore the world around her as if for the first time. Wally pretends to be Eve's handler and accompany her to be examined by Otto, the ship's AI autopilot, who does a cursory scan before going to rouse up the captain to deliver the news. Captain McCree is likewise a lazy bum who refuses to leave his chair. Wally hides beneath the desk to watch him go through the laborious ritual of checking the system's functionality. After making daily announcements to the population, McCree finally wakes Eve up and discovers she has a positive result. This never happened, and when McCree clicks the plant button on his panel, a movie instantly begins to play. The president of Earth comes on the TV and says that a favorable result implies the robots have discovered plant life on Earth, which allows them to return. The control panel releases a handbook, which McCree examines for directions, and while he is busy, Wally attempts to approach Eve, who is startled to see him and hastily hides. McCree uses a mechanical arm to grab the plant, but when Eve opens her body, she is surprised to realize that it has vanished. Otto claims she's damaged, so McCree declares it a false alarm and cancels the flight to Earth before sending Eve to be fixed. When Wally eventually presents himself to McCree, he shakes his hand and leaves dirt on the captain's fingers, prompting McCree to have him cleaned. Once the robots have left, McCree places the soil on the scanner to be evaluated. He is startled by how much he learns about Earth, so he keeps himself occupied by asking the AI a lot of questions. Eve and Wally arrive at the repair facility, where Eve is put into a capsule mod using special hardware. Wally almost receives the same treatment, but he avoids the arms and instead gets a makeover from a malfunctioning beauty assistant. Then Wally is placed in a cage while Eve receives maintenance therapy. Wally misinterprets this as torture and smashes the cage with his laser before breaking through the door to save Eve. The working robot tries to fire Wally to stop him, but he dodges the shot, which hits the control panel. This forces all of the cages to open, giving the robots the opportunity to escape. Because they see Wally as their savior, the malfunctioning robots take him with them and he follows them. When they approach a hallway, a group of security robots block their path and photograph them to raise the alarm. The image displays on all of the ship's screens, warning the inhabitants of renegade robots, and the guards attempt to apprehend them. Eve promptly snatches up Wally and flies away, hiding in a window until the guards leave. Later, Eve takes Wally to the elevator, where he attempts to be pleasant. However, she is so enraged by his antics that she fires a screen to silence him. When the elevator arrives at the hangar, Eve attempts to place Wally in a pod and return him to Earth, but he refuses to go if Eve does not accompany him. When they hear a disturbance, Eve and Wally go into capsule mode to conceal. Otto controls the visitor, a little robot that transports the plant back to Earth. Wally runs into the pod to try to save the plant, but the small guy triggers the capsule and launches Wally into space. Eve promptly enters an emergency exit and is blasted out, while Wally presses all of the controls to halt the pod, but instead initiates the self-destruct process. Eve sees the pod burst and believes it's over, but Wally suddenly passes by her wielding a fire extinguisher like a jetpack. Both robots fly about until they meet in the center, when Wally explains that he has successfully saved the factory. Eve is so overjoyed that she hugs Wally and pushes their foreheads together, exchanging a little spark of electricity that seems like a kiss. Wally is both horrified and amused by this, and he uses his extinguisher to dance with Eve across space on their trip back to the ship. John and Mary notice this as they finally appreciate the gorgeous vista of space, and approaching the window allows them to meet for real. Eve and Wally return to the ship, and Eve slips about to escape the guards while Wally remains behind. She makes it safely to the captain's chamber and presents the plant to McCree, who is overjoyed that they may finally return to Earth. Eve stops in to show him a tape she took of the planet, and McCree is unhappy to learn that Earth isn't as lovely as he remembered. However, when Eve plays Wally's old movie, the sound of music restores hope, and McCree determines that if the small plant didn't give up, neither should he. The film approaches the portion about the hand-holding, and Eve begins to worry about it as well, especially when a tape suddenly reveals her all Wally done for her while she was sleeping. Meanwhile, Wally searches for Eve by entering a trash chute, and Mo follows him. The captain attempts to command a spacecraft to return to Earth, but Otto interrupts him and requests the plant. McCree disagrees and wants an explanation, so Otto plays another video. The president of Earth declares that the cleaning effort failed, and that toxin levels render life on Earth untenable. This signifies that the recolonization effort has been cancelled, and Directive 113 has been implemented, allowing people to remain in space indefinitely. Otto is devoted to a 113, which is why it took Eve's plant when it first checked on her. McCree sees that this film is around 700 years old, indicating that the material is out of date, and the plan demonstrates that life is feasible on Earth, implying that they should return. Otto summons his tiny robot to thwart them, and when the small man steals the plant, Eve threatens it. The robot answers by dumping the plant into the garbage pipe, but Wally climbs out with the plant on his head. Eve attempts to rejoin with Wally, but the little robot grabs her. Wally hides the plant inside his body, but Otto electrocutes him and puts him down the pipe before placing Eve in capsule mode and throwing her away. Then, Otto locks McCree in his room to keep him quiet. Eve wakes up seconds later due to a mouse robot pressing her button and finds herself in the garbage disposal area. Here, the machines compress waste into cubes before throwing them into space, and Eve and Wally end themselves within those cubes. Eve frees herself with a rifle, but she is unable to draw Wally with her, and the cubes are expelled. Suddenly, Mo appears and becomes caught on the inside door. Eve uses the power of the ejection to move Wally away from the debris, and she flies back to cling onto Mo. The garbage robots notice the issue and promptly seal the exterior doors, allowing the three to return inside. Wally isn't operating properly, so Eve searches for chips to repair him. Unfortunately, none of these contemporary parts are suitable for an ancient model, so Wally hands Eve the plant and instructs her to prioritize the goal. Eve initially disagrees and even attempts to grasp Wally's hand to persuade him to alter his decision, but Wally pulls her hand away and claims Earth is more important, citing the lighter as evidence. Eve thinks Earth will have the required components to repair him, so she gathers everyone and flies back into the main section of the. A guard notices them and raises the alarm, but Eve knocks it aside and continues on while the other renegade robots follow her. Otto observes everything on the displays and activates as additional guardians. McCree notices everything as well and starts playing around with the control panel in order to do a transmission. The skipper appears throughout the ship to show Eve the instruction booklet and point to the location where the plant should be put. Eve and Wally quickly start moving, only to find themselves encircled by security robots. However, the renegade robots instantly start attacking the guards to make room for their rescuer. Meanwhile, McCree displays a photo of the plant on the screen and phones Otto, claiming to have the plant to torment the AI into going after him. When Otto enters the room, McCree rushes on it to fight it, and in the process kicks the small robot through the window. After much straining, he manages to reach the console and initiates the ship's travel mode. Now the robots begin to prepare the humans for slumber for their return voyage to Earth. The plant's unique capsule opens in the center of the ship, but when Eve and Wally approach it, Otto knocks McCree off and directs the ship, causing the plant to crash. All of the humans fall from their seats. 2 transferring sofas also begin to fall, but Eve stops them just in time to avoid crushing anyone. Otto shuts off the unique capsule, but Wally races to keep it running, becoming much more damaged. McCree makes an attempt and eventually stands up again, allowing him to leap on Otto and switch it off permanently. The captain then returns the ship to its proper position, while Eve goes to check on Wally and instructs everyone to seek for the plant. Mo, the renegade robots, and the humans work together to rescue the plant and place it in the capsule. This reactivates the returning program and relieves Wally of the pressure, but he still does not function. In barely 10 seconds, the spacecraft does a hyperjump and returns to Earth. As soon as they land, Eve takes Wally to his house and repairs him, blasting a hole in the ceiling to allow sunlight to recharge. Wally awakens, but Eve is horrified to learn that he does not remember her, even after she shows him his collection in the movie. Wally appears to have lost his personality and is simply operating like any other robot. Eve approaches him to say one final goodbye, grasping his hand and giving him a little electric kiss, which leads Wally to pull Eve's hand back. Wally's personality gradually returns, and he and Eve share a beautiful moment as McCree teaches the humans how to nurture the plant. From then on, robots and humans collaborate to recreate their civilization using far more environmentally responsible means.